All right, we're live, and I'll work on the kind of visual here for the next time we do this live Q&A. I realized like right before we were going to go live that I need to work on kind of like the back end orientation of this so that you can see this side of things a little bit better. But I figured, you know, for the most part, I'm just going to be answering the questions. I don't know how much I'll be like actually showing you on here, but I just figured if somebody asks about a prospect on the top 100, I might as well queue it up on the screen and go over to their write up, and I can probably zoom in a little bit on that. You can check out the link to the top 100 in the episode description. As always, thank you so much for everybody coming in, hanging out. Excited to answer all of your questions, and I'm sure concerns about how the list shook out, but I'm excited to do it. My day's going great, Froggy. Hope you're doing well. I love the PFP. That's awesome. I love the PFP. Let's just jump right into it then. Thanks for already having so many questions. I appreciate you supporting. I'll make sure I said it. Baseball tossed. Oh, baseball tossed. I like when Braden Montgomery ranked where he was, seems lower than most places. You know, it's funny because I think I find myself warming up to Braden Montgomery. Not that like I didn't like him ever, but more and more, you know, I think as we're seeing him settle into professional baseball a little bit more. But with Braden, he's just, I think with the archetype that he has, he's going to have to mash, right? Like, so I'm a little concerned that the hit tool might be iffy. And if that's the case, then, you know, he's going to really need to dial into that power. I'm sorry, the screen's kind of bugging out a little bit on me here. He's going to have to really tap into that power. And, you know, I'm getting more and more confident that he is going to tap into that power. My other concern going into this year was how are the swing decisions going to look? Because I think with the fact that I think the hit tool ultimately settles at 45 grade, you know, at best, is he going to be able to make the swing decisions necessary to compensate for, you know, potential 25 to 28%, you know, strikeout rate? I think he took a big step in the right direction in that regard this year. I think you saw him equally productive from both sides of the plate, which was encouraging because going into this year, I was a little bit concerned about, you know, the right side keeping up with the left side. And then the defense, I mean, I think he looks the part in the corner. So, and they're even still giving him some reps in center. So I think everything you wanted to see, like he did, and I think chipped away at some of the concerns. But there's still a decent amount of whiff against secondaries. I wonder if the swing's a little bit rigid at time. The biggest concern for me is the out of zone contact rate, which is like 38%, even if you include the fall league. So it puts even more pressure on the swing decisions to be plus rather than maybe average. So I think there's a little bit more volatility in the profile than maybe gets highlighted. And he also has a ground ball rate at about 50%. So he's going to need to improve that to cut, you know, I think to tap into more power. But there's clearly a ton of raw power. And I think that's the part where maybe I was underestimating, even though I knew it was elite bat speed potentially. In an EV90 of 107 miles per hour this year, which is absolutely spectacular. So buys you some more patience, also allows you to get away with, you know, I think a higher ground ball rate because a lot of those batted balls are going to go through. But, you know, I want to see that right side come along a little bit more as well. If he's going to be, you know, kind of the more well-rounded, complete guy that I think he can be. Let's go. Anderson Brito could be in the next update. I would not be surprised. He is a very talented arm. How much stock do you have in putting Hope one spot higher than Jose De Paula, or do you view them essentially as the same? I would say it's so funny because we just talked about that stacking on the call up. I would say they're really similar in terms of prospect value in my mind, but it's funny because they're so different in terms of the type of player that they are, right? I think the floor with De Paula offensively is higher, but I think there's a better chance of Hope providing value in other aspects where even though Hope has some work to be done defensively, he has a path to being an above average defender in a corner. Whereas De Paula, I don't really know if he has any path to being more than a fringy defender in a corner at that point. At the end of the day, with both these guys, they're going to have to really, really mash. And to me, I could have flip-flopped them. I honestly didn't put too much thought into it. I just didn't want to really switch it because that's where they were going into the year and where they were in the middle of the year. And I didn't think anybody did anything, you know, too much on either end to override the priors in terms of my perspective on it. De Paula continues to battle, you know, the injury concerns and, That's a little bit frustrating. Hasn't totally tapped into that plus raw power yet. Hope talked about it. Like the mechanics just need to be better in terms of being able to stay squared a little bit more. Like I love this swing in terms of his ability, the path, but he counter rotates so much that it can get hard to get the barrel out on pitches in the upper half of the zone. And that's why you saw him kind of struggle with that. But at the same time, it was still a 132 WRC plus in high A and a little bit of double A when he missed half the season last year at low A. And that was his first pro season. So I think it's easy to forget how raw Hope still is and how young he is really in his baseball age and in general. He's just 20 years old. I think DePaula has a better chance of being, an average big league hitter, but I think Hope has a better chance of being an all-star. And so it's like, okay, how do you weigh those things? It's quite difficult. I would say that's the part that makes it almost impossible. Who from this year's draft? What's up, Uncle Ted? I always appreciate you being in here. Who from this year's draft will be in the top 100? So you're saying is that, just to clarify, Ted, is that for the 2026 draft? Or are you saying who that isn't in the top 100 right now from the 2025 draft will be in there? Because I have answers for both of those, but I can circle back to that once we get clarification. And I can answer your other question in the meantime. Who's better, Cam or JR? This is another floor ceiling conversation. Cam Caminiti is so exciting because you got a lefty who was like one of the younger arms in the draft that was running it up to mid 90s pretty comfortably. So athletic on the mound, some deception built in, showing a good slider that kept getting better, flashed a splitter a little bit. I think the ceiling is way higher. But J.R. Ritchie did everything you would have wanted to see in that first full season removed from Tommy John. He added like 3 more pitches. His execution was fantastic. So J.R. Ritchie tomorrow is a back end of the rotation starter in the big leagues. And I think that is quite valuable, obviously. And there's a potential for a little bit more. But Caminiti, I think you clearly see a big league arm one way or another. And I still feel like has a good chance to be, potentially even better than that in a middle rotation arm. So it's kind of what you prefer, right? Do you take the bird in hand or do you roll the dice? Because there's a lot of time for things to go wrong with a teenage lefty who's only pitched in low A. Whereas with J.R. Ritchie, he's already there, right? Like he should break camp as far as I'm concerned and be in that rotation. So we'll see. We got a super chat. Got to jump straight to that. Thank you so much, Oscar. Thank you so much for the super chat and supporting us here. I wouldn't rule it out, to be honest, in terms of Josue DePaula moving. If you see it, the defensive grades we've got here, it's 35 present, 45 future. Like he has become a little bit more nimble. I think you saw a bit more agility in the stolen base department, things like that. But I also wonder, like just with the injuries and things like that, if it does make sense to start filtering him into first base. You also look at the outfield depth, as you mentioned. You got Sirota, you've got Hope, you've got some other guys. I don't think you would ever end the first base thing. I think, and you see that archetype like a Ryan O'Hearn and things like that. I just think it would be valuable for DePaula, who's not a great defender anyway, he's not a very good one at all, to potentially be able to just play passable defense at first base and the outfield. Just have that versatility. Because if you have a better corner outfielder, you would love to just move DePaula to first base where you can have a better defender in that corner. So that's where I like when guys aren't the best defenders, I like having that versatility, even though they may not be good at either spot. And that's where I think they should start to, get maybe some infield reps for him. And I wouldn't rule that out. I will not allow anybody to tell us we're too low on McGonigal when we are. I think we've led the McGonigal charge. So it pained me to put him number 2, but notice him and Connor Griffin have the same future value grade. It's 1A, 1B, but it's impossible to have anybody other than Connor Griffin in the number 1 spot after what he did this year, after what he brings to the table, the upside. And then it's not just the upside. He raked in AA. He put up better numbers than McGonigal in AA, and he's younger, and he's 6'4", and he's a plus runner, and he's a better defender. And this is coming from, I think, the number 1 McGonigal fan outside of his family. It's funny. How long until Kemp Alderman is on there? I like Kemp. I do. I'm working on the Marlins top prospect update right now, and I'm kind of oscillating between 50 future value and 45 plus. It's just, it's a tough profile because it's some of the best raw power in the minor leagues, point blank period. Some of the best raw power in pro baseball, point blank period. We saw him hit a ball 120 miles an hour in the Arizona Fall League last year. We saw an EV90 north of 110, which is some of the best figures you're going to see in baseball. Sorry, I don't know where my screen share just went. Let me make sure I can get that back up here. But at the same time, it's fringy defense in a corner outfield spot. He is stiff, and I think he's going to swing and miss a little bit, and the swing decisions aren't great. So, and he puts the ball on the ground a little bit more than you want to see for a guy with that kind of power. So, I don't know if he'll ever get in there. If he's elevating like crazy, maybe he ends up, if with a hot start, great angles, maybe he sneaks in the first update before he gets called up. I only laughed at this question, Showtime, because of how guaranteed it was for you to ask. He wasn't under consideration. He was. My thing with Morales is, I would love to see him do it at high A. And I know it's not fair because I've had some other low A guys in there, but the zone whiff is a little bit high for a prospect at low A that I'm going to thrust into the top 100. I still have questions about the defense. I don't know if he's going to stick it short. The swing decisions, even though he's patient, could be a little bit better. I have some concerns about the pitch rec, but the angles are good. The EVs are good. And he clearly, he elevated himself a ton. I did not think he'd have the year that he'd have this year. So he went from, not really being a big consideration to, definitely being in the running and a guy that, I considered. But I want to see a little bit more of him, even just doing it at low A, to be honest. And that was part of it too. I think you saw him just torch low A, and I would love to see him just do it over a larger sample and then do a little bit of high A, just because I think there's so much pressure on this bat, given that there's not going to be a ton of value beyond the bat. So that was just a big part of it. So Lewis was a top 100 guy for me, to be honest. I was a little disappointed in, I would say, the underlying data in general. So I know that sounds funny because you're like, well, what do you mean? Doesn't he hit the living crap out of the ball? The EVs are nutty. So I'm not saying it from that perspective. There's a lot of whiff and a lot of chase. And I think, to the degree that I think it could rear its head, at a full season in low A. And I understand he's young and he's got plenty of time, and there's no doubt about that. And I think he's got all the upside in the world. But there's a reason why. And I was nervous about it in the complex league. I was nervous about how things were going to translate even to low A. And I think we saw, that those warts in the profile did kind of rear their heads, right? He struck out 34% of the time in low A and at a 743 OPS. The raw power is crazy. The bat speed is crazy, but it's a 39% chase rate and a 74% in zone contact rate in that low A sample. Even if you incorporate the complex league, and I understand he's young, but top 100 caliber teenage bats, the underlying is going to look better than this in the complex league, especially 38% chase, 77% zone contact rate. It's too risky. And then the out of zone contact isn't very good here. It was a 63% contact rate on the season. As much as I'm excited about the power that Lewis could possess and its crazy, crazy bat speed, I can't get behind, to that degree, I can't get behind a 63% contact rate and a near 40% chase rate. It's just, the odds are so stacked against that translating. He's got time to clean it up, but I got to see it cleaned up, if that makes sense. Who is the top prospect in your list that you think could be realistically traded this season? All right, let's talk about it. Let's just go through, right? If you're following along, please excuse my dog. You got Connor Griffin, no chance. Kevin McGonigal, no chance. McLean, no chance. Made, no chance. Emerson, no chance. Let's just keep going. I really don't think any of these guys have a chance to get traded. Even, and you get the Dodgers duo here, that's probably the best that isn't a 0% chance, but I still think it's extremely low. So it's not going to be the answer to my question. Still none of these guys. I don't even think Connolly early would be moved unless it's, I mean, even in a Ketel Marte theoretical, I think they could put together a package that doesn't require early or Tully getting moved, even in a world where I don't know. I don't believe that trade ever really happens. Scroll. I don't think Casey will be moved because I don't think they're bringing back Kyle Tucker. I think Quintero would be the most likely if the Dodgers are going to make that big splash. Freeland would be the layup there, given, I think he's a little bit blocked here and doesn't have as much of the upside and I think shine to dream on. Lawler is another one where I think if the trade made sense for the D-backs, given where they're at, that's a guy that you could potentially move. But if I had to say like the most likely, it's got to be Harry Ford at 64. And this shows you just how disinclined, whatever, uninclined, I don't know what the word is, how the lack of interest in most teams that most teams have in trading their top prospects. I don't see almost any of these guys getting moved until you get to Harry Ford. And even then, like all the conversation is, I think we're fine with, having him be a backup and part-time guy here. But I think the answer would be one of the Dodgers guys. And then if not, Harry Ford. Otherwise, I don't really see many of these guys getting moved. I don't think it makes sense really for any of these teams. And then once it does make sense to a little bit higher, the guys are too damn good. They're too good. Does Preller have anyone else to trade for pitching? I mean, let me look at my Padres top prospect list as we're working on it now that I actually think can make. I mean, Salas, at this point, you're not trading him. Humberto Cruz, it's funny though, you're going to end up trading pitching for pitching. So that's a part. To be honest, I don't know. I don't think so. You would have to trade pitching for more pitching. So no, unless you want to trade Mayfield and Humberto Cruz. I do like those two, two really intriguing teenage arms. I think Mayfield just turned 20. But again, you're trading your two best pitching prospects for pitching. I guess you could theoretically do that. Ooh, we got another super chat. Sorry, I missed that. Hold on. Thank you so much for the super chats. You guys are goated for that, especially Johnny loves steel balls. Realistic outcome for Arquette. I would say, I think that's the 250, 15 to 20 home runs is the very realistic. I think when I see from Arquette, and he's a very natural hitter, which by that I mean he just kind of, the way he hits is he looks like a kid that is playing wiffle ball in the backyard. Bat's kind of loud, just picks his foot up, puts it down and swings. I think there's some things that he could do mechanically to optimize a little bit more, but I see plus power potential with him. He's so wiry. He still is learning to use his lower half. It's really just kind of, like I said, pick it up, put it down, swing. I think he can tap into more power. I do think he's going to be power over hit, but I think he could be average hit plus power. Obviously, this is a little bit of a more higher end outcome, but I think the median, I would be hoping for a little bit more than that. I think he's 20 plus homers, 250, 260, 20 plus homers is the standard median outcome. But I think with what he brings to the table and the projection, he absolutely could provide 30 plus home runs. I think Snelling at this point is his ceiling's higher. And that's why the change here is crazy. Snelling is the number 30 prospect for us. He took a fastball that was 45 grade and made it 60 grade in 1 year. And it wasn't just by seeing an uptick, which he did see a significant uptick. He also gained more than an inch and a half of induced vertical break. So you gain 2.5, nearly 3 miles per hour on your fastball, and you gain an inch and a half of induced vertical break. It went from a 45 grade fastball to a 60. And in double and triple A this past year, against his fastball, opponents hit 164. They had a 523 OPS against his fastball. Just to put that in perspective, last year they had an 859 OPS against it. It was all right, well, how's he going to work around this fastball? Now this fastball sets the tone. Then you have the curveball that's always been there for him. That was an above average pitch. You have a changeup. I think it's borderline plus. You have a changeup that really blossomed this year behind that fastball, and that's an above average pitch. And then he added this slider as a bridge that looks like a solid fourth offering, and he fills up the zone. He's an elite athlete. He's an elite competitor. The makeup's off the charts. He's 21 years old. I think the floor is a 4 or 5 starter at this point. I think the ceiling is closer to a strong 3. And maybe a fringe 2 if it all works out. But I think he settles in as a strong 3. And that's why I'm just such a big fan of his when it comes to just what he brings to the table in the floor ceiling conversation there. What's the ceiling on Quintero? I'm imagining that you're talking about Eduardo. He keeps pushing it higher. And I hate putting ceilings on guys because, you just never know what else they're going to add to the equation here. But I think you can get a really unique skill set where it's potentially plus ability in the outfield, the speed to be, I think a plus factor on the base paths, average hit, now above average power because he totally changed his angles where he's now lifting the ball at a much higher clip. He was impacting the ball a bit more. The swing decisions were plus. So if we're talking about a guy that's average hit, plus swing decisions, above average power, plus defense in center field, I mean, it looks like kind of what you're getting from Andy Pages now. And I know Pages had a bad postseason, but I think it's something similar to Pages with obviously more to dream on because he's younger. And maybe there's a little bit more to tap into. I think the EVs are slightly higher than what Pages was at when he was 20 years old, but I think it's, a slightly elevated version of Andy Pages. And that's why we had him at number 44, on the top 100 list. Any chance we see Joswar Gonzalez with enter Leo DeVries type of hype? I'll never rule anything out like that. I think with what DeVries did at the end of the year would be tough because Joswar, he finished the year last year in the DSL. You imagine he's going to start this year at the complex. He'll be 18 years old. Maybe he quickly hits his way off the complex and gets to low A. The odds of him getting to double A before his 19th birthday, like DeVries did, and then also having a 995 OPS in 26 games at double A are very slim. That said, I think we could see a significant climb from him. Not quite the caliber of Joswar, or not quite the caliber of DeVries, but I think we could see a pretty rapid rise because I see above average hit. I see the potential for average power, but fringy at this point, plus speed, above average defense at shortstop, switch hitter. You could see all those things come together and all those scouting grades could get bumped up. But, he has a really unique skill set that I think is, can make him really dynamic and a popular prospect. If you had to pick a Mets prospect not in their top 15, 20 guys, that's a good question. Let me think. Not in their top 15 to 20. Because I'll probably pick Eli Serrano every year until maybe nothing ever happens. But just because of the ability that he has in terms of the projection, the EVs, the field to hit. But he's kind of in that top 15, so can't really count him. I would say, he had a bad year, which put him outside of the top 15. So that's why I'll make him my pick. I'd say Boston Barrow. I don't feel great about it, but this is a deep cut question. I think you could side with an arm and you'd have a way better chance of being right because of the way that they develop arms and how many different pitchers have emerged in this system. But outside of the top 15, I'd say probably Boston Barrow, just because left-handed swing, it's pretty sweet. I think there's a lot more to be unlocked there. I was pretty shocked he honestly had the year that he had. I thought he'd be far better than he was. I would say Mo Baller was kind of a holding pattern because I know he can hit, I know he can hit. My question is the glove. I think there's above average hitting power with him, and there's really just no questioning that anymore. He's really shown that. And I think at the big league level, even, we didn't get a huge sample size to see him do it, but we got 23 games and 827 OPS. I'm like, yeah, that's who he is. It's a 62% ground ball rate in that span, though. And he's not a guy that's necessarily going to get away with a higher ground ball rate consistently. So that part, could have been better. But he also hit a home run 113. Like, you saw a lot of good things. I would say it was more of just a status quo with him, because my biggest questions with him are the defense. And we've hardly been able to see him catch at the big league level. So I'd say holding pattern from the big league debut, but solid. And it's Moises Ballesteros for those who may not have been familiar with the nickname Mo Baller, which is one of my favorites. How much higher did Thomas White's floor rise after the season? What does he need to do to take the next step in your eyes? What's up, Kevin? I appreciate you, my man. I don't know if he elevated his floor as much as he just emboldened my belief that his ceiling can be sky high, because he still walked a lot of guys. Kind of like we knew that no one was going to really hit him, and no one hit him. And maybe even less people hit him than we thought. But it doesn't really matter if you have 3+ pitches if you don't throw strikes. And I still have concerns that he may not throw enough strikes. Clearly not enough concern to keep him out of the top 15 or top 20, where he's at number 18, because the stuff is so outrageous. But the floor is, I tend to avoid the word floor when I'm talking about Thomas White. So I think from what we saw, that like you have the fallback of him being, a disgusting leverage arm. But even then, like, I don't know if I have a ton of confidence in that. Like, there's just a chance he just doesn't throw enough strikes. I would say I feel emboldened in the front line ceiling, but I don't know if I feel much better about the floor, to be honest. It's just, it's going to need to get better from a walk perspective. If he were still prospect eligible, would Jacob Marcy be in the top 100? Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, because it wasn't just what Marcy did at the big league level. He was doing it in AAA too. You had a tangible swing adjustment. I wrote that piece on justbaseball.com. We talked to Marcy about it, like tangible swing adjustment, specific things that he improved. The approach even got better. The angles got better. The defense, I think people were skeptical on the center field ability out there. I always thought that was silly. The quality of contact improved vastly. And I think that was the biggest concern. So to improve that, and then to translate it at the highest level, I think he showed more than enough. I think if he just did what he did in AAA, never got called up theoretically for the entirety of the season, I probably would have even had him as a top 100 guy then, just off of what we saw from him. How delusional am I to think that that River Ryan could sit 97 to 90 or to 97 to 100 when he comes back? I don't think you're delusional at all. I just, you can't expect it. You never know what's going to happen necessarily. But remember, his last start that we saw before TJ, he averaged 97 on the fastball. If he comes back a little bit stronger, like so many guys do, I don't see why he wouldn't be sitting there. And that's what's so crazy. We have a 27-year-old on the top 100 list here, but he has so much talent. And he might even come back looking better, because it was a list of ailments I think he was throwing through because his arm was kind of, on the way out over the last couple of years. And then I think it's similar to the conversation we have with some other guys finally getting it fixed. May end up allowing him to tap into even more. Do you think Johnny King and Gage Staniford can join the list next year? Yeah, I think both can. And Staniford was close. Another guy that I think is right on the outside looking in. I think he had one of the most underrated seasons in the minor leagues. Like, because of Trey Savage and Cal Steven, I know Steven got traded to the Guardians, but I think both those guys, especially in Vancouver and then in New Hampshire a little bit, kind of overshadowed him. But Staniford was amazing. I mean, opponents at 180 against him with a 540 OPS. He struck out 35.5% of batters. Now the command's going to need to get better, and that's what held him out. That's why Staniford just missed. But he struck out that many batters. The quality of contact against him was terrible. Like, he was, in terms of for the hitters, it was terrible. He only allowed 4 homers and a 247 slug. I mean, it is great stuff. Great stuff. And I'm like, The curveball is disgusting. It is a what the Twin or what the Blue Jays are doing right now. The fact that the Blue Jays have turned into like a pitching powerhouse all of a sudden, it's who would they're turning out arms. And then Johnny King, it's kind of a similar conversation. It's just can we see better command from him? The stuff is stupid. I mean, a lefty at 18 years old. He didn't turn 19 until July 26th last year. At, at 18 years old, sitting 94. I mean, we saw him touching 96 and with a diabolical breaking ball and then flashing a changeup as well. And there's a reason why he struck out 40% of batters this year uh, between the complex and low A. But he also walked 14%. So that's going to need to get better. And that's what's just kind of holding him back a little bit. Is low A teenage arm with command questions. Those guys are always going to be on the outside looking in a little bit. Ricky Tiedemann, the second I see him back throwing, and anywhere near his velocity, he'll be in the top 100. It's kind of just a wait and see with him because I just don't know. He's had so many different injuries. I'm hoping kind of the same thing where finally getting that elbow fixed maybe fixes everything else and having the time off and rehabbing gets the rest of his body right. But there's just so many different ailments that he's dealt with. I want to make sure that he looks like himself when he comes back from it. As someone who has turned out, sorry, as someone that has tuned out being an A's fan for the last few years, can you give me an overall picture of their future? It's funny because I can't stand John Fisher, right? I think he's the biggest joke of an owner, one of the biggest jokes of an owner in sports. Just totally exploiting so many issues with the system, did poor Oakland fans dirty, but the team is in a very good spot. I think if I was taking over a franchise, that'd be one of the teams I'd be most excited to take over because their offensive core is incredible. Nick Kurtz was one of the best hitters in the sport, period, from the point that he was called up. From the point that he was called up onward, he was the third best hitter behind Judge and Ohtani, pretty much, in terms of WRC+. Jacob Wilson would have won Rookie of the Year if not for Nick Kurtz, most likely. Like, Jacob Wilson was incredible. He's going to be a really good shortstop for a long time, was an all-star. You have Lawrence Butler, you have Brent Rooker locked up. Their offensive core is just so exciting. And then the fact that I understand you trade Mason Miller and you're probably not thrilled about that on the surface if you're an A's fan, but now you just went out and got one of the best prospects in the sport. And it's not like he's a 2029 ETA. Leo DeVries could be up sometime next year. And I think you plug him in at third. With the way that he hits the ball in the air consistently, he is going to benefit from that launch pad in Sacramento. And then I imagine Vegas is going to be a bit of a launch pad as well. That offensive situation is just incredible. I love where they're at with some of the vets that they have. Then to pair with Kurtz, Langeliers. I think Soderstrom, like what he did this past year, is kind of underrated because of what you saw from, Nick Kurtz. But Soderstrom put up a 125 WRC+. I mean, Kurtz, Langeliers, Soderstrom, Rooker, Jacob Wilson. I know Butler had a bit of a down year, but he's an above average big league bat. All of those guys are above average to great big league bats with years of control. Then you have one of the best prospects in the game in Leo DeVries. Then you have some good bench pieces as well, like a J.J. Bleday and a Colby Thomas. Then you say, okay, well, what about the pitching? Well, that's the area where they definitely need some more help. But they signed Luis Severino, who is still a solid arm. Luis Medina, who was their top pitching prospect for me for a while, or not Luis Medina, excuse me. Luis Morales, who was their top pitching prospect for me for a while, got up there and proved that he's a good big league arm. Jacob Lopez, out of nowhere, looks like he could be a solid big league starter. Luis Medina will be back healthy this year. One way or another, he's going to fit into the equation. Gage Jump is one of the better left-handed pitching prospects in baseball. He will be up there at some point this coming season. You have Gunnar Hoglund, who's a decent back-end arm. Mason Barnett looks like he could be a decent back-end arm. Jack Perkins looks like a really good Swiss Army knife type of arm. I love where they're at. Then they acquired Cade Morris, who looks like a back-end arm. Wei-Yin Len looks like a back-end arm. Like, they don't have a ton of frontline guys, but this was a system that we were like, who's going to throw for them? And now they have all these back end type of guys, and then some others that I think bring some intrigue. I love the strides that Steven Echeverria made this year. I think he at least is a bullpen arm. They're in a really good spot, and I think they're only going to be in a better spot with the if they make the right moves. And I do have confidence in them being able to do that. How would I manage the gluttony of young talent the Red Sox are sitting on? That is a great question. I think I mean, and it's hard to know because you don't know what teams are looking for. Like when you're making a trade, like theoretically, say you wanted to make a trade with the D-backs. I think the D-backs are pursuing pitching. So maybe it would be difficult to move the guys that I would want to move. But I'll just tell you who I would keep and who I would move. Connolly Early, there's no way I'm moving him. And by the way, he's going to be on the Just Baseball show this week. Look out for that. Very excited for that episode. I think the two guys you got to be looking at and make a lot of sense to potentially be moved. And I probably should have answered in the prospects who could be traded conversation. Franklin Arias, I think a good chance he could be moved, but only in a trade that makes a lot of sense because I think Arias is a great asset. And I think he's weirdly become underrated. The bat to ball is plus. I think he has a good chance of sticking at shortstop. Even though the defense didn't fully come along, I think the way people were hoping this year, but I still think he has all the ingredients to be good shortstop. He's flashed good power. There's a lot to like there. Then you have the password, Justinson Garcia. He's blocked as can be. So I think Arias, Garcia, those are the two players I'm packaging from a position player side. Brandon Clark, I'm probably dangling because he's had, multiple hip surgeries, but the stuff is so crazy. I think a team would like to take a chance on it. From what I heard, they were trying to move Clark a little bit at the deadline too, because it was a no-go on Tolley and early for them anyways. I'm not trading Perales. Unless I'm getting Ketel Marte or a really, really special controllable talent, all-star level controllable talent. I think Luis Perales at worst is going to be a closer in the big leagues. It's a 70 grade, maybe 80 grade fastball. Disgusting split and a good slider, and cutter as well. He is outrageously gross, and that's why I put him on the top 100 list. Let's go to Perales. I'm not moving him. 70 fastball, 60 split, above average cutter. I realize I put cutter twice there. That should be slider on the 45/50. But gnarly stuff as he comes back from TJ. He's been sitting 99 with plus carry. It's just stupid. It's stupid. So I would move the password, Arias, and Clark. I try to package those guys together. I don't think I'd want to move really many of the other guys there. I really like what they've got otherwise. I would agree, Froggy. I think the system's getting a little bit better. They've had some guys take solid strides last year, especially on the hitting side, but then also some pitchers as well. I think you had a few different things. That kind of trended in the right direction. I think the big one for them is going to be, can Xavier Nyans hit enough? And if he starts to show some good things, which I think he has crazy upside, and the Astros don't have any concern about big whiff prospects, right? They're not afraid of swing and miss. So you always run the chance of them not hitting enough and the prospect value tapering off, but you also run the potential of them hitting enough and the prospect, ability and shine skyrocketing. So it goes both ways, but I definitely think it got a little bit better. And if a couple of those guys can hit a little bit more, you'll see that for sure. I think Arnold I'm glad you mentioned him. I forgot about him. Just another guy that fell into their lap and gives them another exciting pitcher. I think the floor with Arnold at worst, he's a high leverage relief arm, like Sean Doolittle type at worst. But I think he's so talented. I think he develops into a middle rotation, type of just funky left-handed arm. But he needs to find a third pitch. The command needs to get a little bit better. And the fastball, it's unique in terms of the release characteristics, but he struggled to command it, missed over the middle, got hit a little bit hard. So there's just some tweaks and everything, but he's extremely funky. He's extremely unique, extremely talented. And I think that's, gives him a lot of upside. And I was surprised he honestly fell to them. And I think it was a perfect scenario for them, given where the organization is at. Shitaro Mori, he's a big chase in Bowman. I know that. Mori's interesting because I haven't been able to see a ton of him, obviously. But that's just another unique talent that the A's have. I think the A's have one of the best systems in baseball, like point blank, period. A big part of Maury signing with the A's is that the A's said, "Hey, Maury, we're going to let you pitch," but we haven't seen him pitch yet. So that's why I'm like kind of waiting to see the complete outlook. But for a teenager making the leap over here, I thought he showed some good things offensively this past year. I mean, 777 OPS. Yeah, he walked at a high clip. He was patient. He flashed some decent EVs. There was some pop to the pull side. I think he's an intriguing prospect. So if he's a decent pitcher as well, like, and all indications point towards him being that, I want to see the pitch data and see a little bit more. He's a really fascinating prospect, no doubt about it. Do the Dodgers protect Ronan Kopp? And if not him, who? Kopp is a tough one because he's still just 23 years old. And he's not going to turn 24 until July. He struck out 36% of batters. But I imagine there's some frustration of like, okay, how do we get this guy to throw enough strikes? That said, I think a lot of teams would take a chance on him and stash him because you have just a lefty throwing 96 with a nasty slider. But you got to plug him into your bullpen if you take him. And, again, it was a 16% walk rate. These are the guys where it's so tough. It's so tough. Let me go back to that. I'll come back to that because I want to have a full list of Rule 5 eligible prospects for the Dodgers to make sure I make like the most educated guess here. But I don't know. That is interesting. I would lean towards them protecting him just because I think people like to poach nasty Dodgers. But I don't know. The fastball command isn't great. That's a really tough one. I wish I knew. I'd be floored if there was someone on the top 100 that isn't added to the 40 man. That would mean I'm bad at my job. And that would be disappointing, honestly. I will say. Peter Hubeck needs to be added to, and yeah, I think there might be a better chance that he gets taken, to be honest. I'm trying to scroll back and see Carter Jensen, dark horse rookie of the year, 100%. I'm all in on him being a dark horse guy. Baseball is not dead. What's going on? What is going on? Gage Jump. I like Jump a lot. It is a little bit of a unique delivery where like it seems like there's some effort there. But, you look at what Jump's arsenal here. It's a plus heater, potentially better than that. Got a plus sweeper and an above average curveball. I think the effort and kind of the jerkiness to his delivery also throws off hitter timing. So it works in his favor. And it clearly doesn't affect his command because he only walked 7% of batters. He filled up the zone at a really high clip with the fastball. The slider and curveball strike rate was solid enough. The pitch that, I'm curious if he can come along a little bit further is that changeup. And he did start to throw it for a strike more, at the end of the year. And like, is it ever going to be a great pitch? No, but if hitters have to at least respect it and just keep it in mind, that's something that he wasn't really able to do in the beginning of the year. It was like a 45% strike rate through his first 10, 15 starts. And then it was up to like 55, 56 the rest of the way. I mean, that just helps kind of round out that arsenal. But the pair of curveballs, I think either way are going to be able to keep right-handed hitters at bay with the two different shapes. And then just the high quality fastball helps a ton as well. I think ultimately he's a middle, you're dreaming on a middle rotation type guy. I think worst case, he's a 4. But I think he's got a good chance to be a solid 3 with the fastball whiff that he's able to generate. It was like 30% chase on the fastball, above average in zone whiff. And, for a guy that does like to buzz it up at the top and who pitched in the Texas League, and, I think Midland can be a tough place to pitch, did a pretty good job of keeping the ball in the yard. Yeah, only 7 homers on the season and, 28 appearances. Let's see what else we got. Who is a guy under 20, not on the top 100 that you could see having a breakout prospect in 20 or breakout season in 2026? That is a great question. Under 20, not in the top 100, who I could see having a breakout season. Hmm. I mean, from the pitching perspective, I think you look at like a Kevin DeFrank in the Marlins system. I mean, you're talking about a kid that was 16 years old at the start of the season last year, sitting 97 with his fastball. Um, that's just crazy stuff. He threw strikes at a better clip than you'd expect for a 6'5". I don't know whatever he is, 240-pound kid. Emphasis on kid. 7.5% walk rate. The fact that he's exceeding 100 miles per hour and, already flashing, decent changeup, good slider. I would say DeFrank could be a guy that we see kind of ascend, especially in that Marlins system with some of the success that they've had, with these guys. Um, I would say he's a good candidate there. I'm trying to think some other teenagers that fit the bill. I think, sticking on the Marlins side, Andrew Salas is an example. I mean, when I watched him play this past year, he just looked like a 16-year-old playing professional baseball, and a really good one, because most 16-year-olds playing professional baseball would look like a fish out of water, and he didn't. But the bat looked heavy at times. He looked very young. And I know this spring training and this offseason, a big focus for Salas has been is going to be adding strength. And if he adds some more strength, I think that's a guy that could easily, jump into the top 100 conversation as well. David Shields, I know, he had a big year, but a guy that could probably break out from prospect perspective as well. And I think has great stuff as well. And it just needs to find a little bit more velo, but unique, deceptive, definitely a guy I like. What's a big change Joshua Baez needs to make to get in the top 100? I considered him. I did. He was another guy that, I think would fit in the just miss category. I think following up the breakout year after, several rough years helps. Not that I don't believe in it. I think he clearly figured something out. I think that's abundantly clear. The exit velocities are better than plus. The swing decisions were actually above average. The contact rates were good enough. There's just a lot of pressure on him to slug. So I think the answer would be the defense. Because right now I see below average glove. If he can get to average out there and duplicate what he did last season, I think that's where you get a lot more confidence and maybe he pushes his way into the top 100. It was an 870 OPS from the point he got to AA, 16 homers and 84. I mean, he was fantastic and he can absolutely mash. So I would just say seeing him do it a little bit longer. But again, he was a just miss guy anyway. So if I could just see the glove come along a little bit more, see him do it a little bit longer, and frankly, just some guys get out of the way, right? Some guys graduate. I think he'll be, a guy that could easily be in the next top 100 list. This is a great question, and I think almost impossible to answer. What do I think would be a reasonable first full year from Trey Savage? Here's the funny thing. People looked at Trey Savage and said, oh my gosh, he broke the record for strikeouts for a rookie and, in the playoffs and this and that. And he did. He's really good. That's why he's the number 7 prospect for us. But if you combine the playoffs and the regular season, he's really good. You get a 3.46 ERA between the playoff starts and the regular season. I think somewhere around there. And it's funny because so many of the replies we got were like, how is he Savage not the number 1 prospect? Look at it. Did you not see what he did in the World Series? I did. That's why he jumped so much, even to the top 10, because I think the floor now, you feel really confident in knowing what he at least is now and what he will be next year. But, I think there's still some execution things that we saw when he's on, it's 12 strikeouts, no walks and 7 innings. But when he's not on, guys start to spit on, the secondary stuff. He's not establishing the heater. And then all of a sudden he's working from behind. And he's not a guy that does as well. No one does as well when they're working from behind. But with you, Savage, I think it's when he establishes that high release, high carry heater, then everything works really well off of it. And when he's really commanding the splitter, he can pitch you backwards as well. And then you're all domed up and then he freezes you with the fastball. But when he's not commanding, I think hitters can kind of shrink the zone a little bit, and that's where you'll see those hot and cold starts. I think if he's a 3.45 ERA, like a 3.4 ERA next year, it's a really good starter in his rookie season. It's amazing. But that's not number one prospect in baseball. That's why Connor Griffin is, and Kim McGonigal's too, and some of these superstar upside middle infielders are. Because I don't think Savage is ever going to be an ace. I think he's going to be a middle rotation starter and a really solid one at that. And maybe he's a really good two because he flashes of that. I think really good splitter guys are going to have those starts where they look like an ace, but I just don't know if he's going to be that day in and day out enough to be an ace. I think he's a really good arm for a really long time in the big leagues. And that's, I think it's probably about in the mid threes. I think he needs to add a curveball. We talked about that a little bit on the Just Baseball show. There's definitely people that are more qualified in terms of pitch shapes and how plots can like work with each other. I think it would help to have a fourth pitch, but I don't know if a curveball necessarily is the need. Because think about it, everything's already working vertically, right? Even the slider is a gyro slider, and it works off the splitter because it has this backup break that kind of works, I think, a little bit more. I think the splitter breaks even more to the arm side, and then sometimes the slider doesn't back up as much, and it breaks a little bit more to the glove side. But I imagine he needs something a little bit more horizontal. The problem is I don't think anything is going to work that much horizontally other than the splitter. Like, I think he needs something that breaks a little bit more glove side. Like, if he theoretically could throw a sweeper, that would be great. I just don't know if he can throw a sweeper from the top of the Eiffel Tower, essentially, which is where he throws it from. Like, I don't know how he adds a different pitch. I think maybe even like a cutter, but it's going to be a gyro cutter like the slider. Like, I think everything that he throws is going to be in an elevator. So I don't really know. Like, that's where I would love to talk to somebody from Tread or Driveline. And it's like, what would you do with this release angle to try to find something that works a little bit more, differently than everything else? He's a really, 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 really unique pitcher when you have all of them, all of the movements in the same area on a plot, but that also makes him really good. And they're just different enough to where he's not. But then that's where there's some starts where they're not as different. It's not moving exactly how he wants it to. Maybe the slider isn't, maybe the splitter isn't. And then hitters are a little bit more on him because everything overlaps a little bit more. So it's a really interesting situation. But I think if he could find the most realistic would be, I think, a cutter that he just kind of throws same grip and just turns it a little bit. And that could be just harder, another velo band. And he can maybe just get some late cut that'll probably play up from that release point. And even if it kind of bullets, I think from that release point and with the fastball having some arm side run, I think it could, play up a little bit more in terms of the glove side action. But I think the glove side action already plays up a little bit, and it makes it appear to hitters like he's working more horizontally than he does. Thoughts on Roki for 26? Does he still need a fourth pitch to survive? I think the biggest thing Roki needs is velocity to survive. And that's why I just like him as a reliever, man. I really do. I got killed for this. I got killed for this at the beginning of the year where I said 97 is not going to play with Roki Sasaki because it's such a standard release point and it's such generic fastball shape that hitters are going to crush that. At 99, generic fastball shape doesn't matter as much, especially when you have an 80 grade splitter, because it speeds them up even more. So it feels like 103. But when he's 97, 98, even then, like, it got hit harder. When we saw him, I think a big reason why we saw him be so effective in relief was that all of a sudden now he's sitting at the fastball velocities that he was sitting at as an NPB pitcher. And I just don't know if he has the arm health to be able to sit at that velocity as a starter using in a starter's workload. I mean, maybe whatever was bothering him got right, but like, I'll give you, this isn't going to include the minor leagues, but let's go to average fastball velocity as a starter. And remember, he just had a litany of arm issues through the years. That's why when we ranked Roman Anthony ahead of him in the preseason top 100 list, people were like, oh, well, if you're going to rank rookies a prospect, he needs to be number one. No, because there's a lot of risk that came with him. That said, I think the comp I always gave was Yohan Duran. Like, that's what I thought he would be. And I think he showed that he can be that. And I think he should just lean into that. I think it'll preserve his health. I think it'll preserve his confidence. And I think it'll allow him to go into this year and allow the Dodgers to go into this year knowing that they have a guy in a specific role. Because if you try him back as a starter again, you don't know if he can be that. And then, well, you're going to just transition him back into the bullpen. I think it's a little bit of ragdolling. I think you should just continue to get used to, pitching as a reliever, something that he did very well. Let me find the pitch velocities by starter and reliever, because it is, I think, worth noting. Okay, as a starter, this is big leagues and the minor leagues. Fastball average 96.3 miles per hour. That fastball had a 945 OPS against, a 90.5% zone contact rate, and a 5.8% swinging strike rate. It got bludgeoned at 96.3 miles per hour. As a reliever, fastball averaged 99 miles per hour. Opponents slashed 107, 161, 214. 73% strike rate, a 13% swinging strike rate, and a zone contact rate of 78%. It's night and day. Night and day. I think the focus should be less on adding another pitch, and it should be more on how can this fastball sustainably be this? And in his best years in the MPB, it was 99 the whole season. That's why I was concerned, because in his last season before coming over, it dropped a tick and a half. And then we saw that here. It dropped another tick. When he's 99, he's the rookie we saw in NPB. When he's 96, 97, he's the rookie we saw in the beginning of this year. So I like him as a reliever, and I don't know why they're going that route. I think there's multiple reasons why it can backfire, and I think they're doing it to appease him, let him potentially, unfortunately, fail at that, and then go back. But if he's going to be throwing 96, yeah, he's going to need to add another pitch. He's going to need to be more than fastball splitter. And you got to add another pitch while trying to maintain fastball velocity, while trying to locate the splitter consistently. I just don't get it. And I don't know why they're doing that. I think you put that man in the bullpen and you let him just be a demon that way. Which guy on the top 100 do you think the rest of baseball is too low on? That is a great question. Let's refer to the list. I think Colt Emerson is one. I think a lot of people like him, right? But I don't think it's very negotiable that Colt Emerson is a top 10 prospect. And I guess anything's negotiable. That's kind of obnoxious to say. I struggle to follow an argument that there are 10 prospects better than him. I think he's that good. I think he's shown that age-wise, performance-wise this past year, mechanical adjustment, defensively, makeup, left-handed hitting shortstop, like everything you want to see. I think he's generally too low. I think Aiden Miller, for a lot of the same reasons, is generally too low. It seems like everyone's kind of caught up on Carson Bench, so wouldn't say him as much. I'll always say it about who else we got here. Eli Willits is an interesting one too. I know he's the number one overall pick, but I think people like to, myself included, coming out of the draft, but I don't know. I think quickly, the more I've been able to see, I think Willits is just better than Ethan Holiday. I just do. Let's see. I think Waldschmidt is a guy that people are a little bit, no, I think that was when I actually realized the more I looked at, people were actually ranking him higher than I thought. AJ Ewing. I'm giving you above average bat to ball, maybe even better than that. Plus speed, good defense in center, good defense at second, good swing decisions, left-handed hitter, bajillion stolen bases. What else you need from AJ? By the way, he was 20 this year. He had an average exit velocity of 89 miles per hour as a guy that's more bat to ball and speed. He had a chase rate of 21%. He still hits the ball in the air enough to compile 40 extra base hits. Guy's just a really, really good player. I think people are too low on him as well. I'm trying to think of anybody else, but those are definitely some right off the top. Jackson Fair seemed to come on late. Yeah, he comes on late every year. It's back-to-back years of that. I could see a late call up. I still think with Ferris, I think it's most likely we see him late in the year or next year. The velo dropped a little bit towards the end of the season. I mean, it was a lot of innings for him. I would just like to see a confident third pitch. Like it's fastball slider and then really nothing else. Like he tries the curveball and the changeup, those combine for a 46% strike rate. So I just think being fastball slider heavy, both those pitches are good, not elite. I think he's a little bit limited. I do think there's some bullpen risk here, and I, I would lean towards maybe not seeing him, to be honest. But who knows? He could tap into more velo, get a little bit more out there, and who knows? I would love to try this. I would love to try the Yoshi workout. I am not built like that, my friend. I wish. I absolutely wish. Few more questions. Harris involved in a Scooble trade. Yeah, if he's like the fourth piece. How do I feel about Miguel Loyola going into this season? I like him. I do. I mean, his fastball is amazing. I just wish he could throw more strikes. But it's a Christian Javier fastball. It's a nasty cutter. It's a good changeup off of it, or good enough because it gets zone whiff. He could flip the glove up with the fastball when he's on and just dominate with it. It's like clearly just out of this world in terms of the shape. He ticked down velocity wise this year. He was averaging 93, and opponents still hit 140 with a 495 OPS against it in the PCL. But when he was throwing 94 last year, I mean, it was pure domination with the heater. Opponents also hit 140 against, but huge in zone whiff numbers. So if he can just get back to closer to the mid 90s and throw some more strikes, I mean, he's a monster. It's just his biggest competitor against him is himself, really. This is a great question. I think by the end of this year, coming year, like by the end of 2026, I would not be surprised at all if Serwinowski is the better pitcher. I think there's more upside. I think there's than Ferris. I think there's more upside. I think he's more unique. By the way, Serwinowski's last start of the year, he averaged 96 on the fastball in his Double-A debut. You think he was a little juiced up for that? The slider, I think, is potentially a better pitch. The velo is there a little bit more, and he's shown a little bit more of a feel for a changeup than Ferris did, even though neither of them really have. I wouldn't be surprised if he is the better lefty. Is Carter Jensen the biggest jump over the course of the season for a guy now in your top 15? Are there any similar profiles lower in your rankings? I don't know, man, because like it's definitely one of the biggest leaps. I think one of the only ones is like Luis Pena this year, going from unranked to catapulting into the top 20 because of how outrageous he is. I would say, I don't know, man. Like it's 70 raw power from Jensen at the catching position. So like, who's making that leap? I don't know. Like, it will never be 70 power, but Ethan Salas is a 70 defender. If Salas hits at all, he could definitely make that leap. But no, I think the answer is honestly no. And of course, I say no, and then someone will do it. And that's why the sport's amazing. You just never know what the hell is going to happen. But in short, not that I can see right now in the back end of the top 100. Not that I can see right now. I hope Cam Leiter, he's got to be healthy, right? I think there were some serious concerns with the shoulder before the draft that caused him to slip a little bit. But if he's healthy, he could be a rocket ship. And I think same with Zach Root. Couple more quick questions. Ooh, this is a tough question. Um, ugh, yeah, but that's less of an indictment on Caglione. I think he's special in terms of the power potential, but but he has to absolutely mash, right? Because he's either playing first base or kind of a bad corner outfield. So needs to absolutely mash. And the approach is obviously always going to be a little bit of a challenge for him. But if it all works out for him, like his ceiling is like 60 homers. Like as dumb as that sounds. And Kaufman, it's since I've been doing this, and it's not like Jim Callis and can say, "Oh, this is the best." When a guy like that says, "Since I've been doing this, it holds a little bit more weight." But since I've been doing this, I've never seen a player with the power, a prospect with the power that Caglione has in terms of being able to do damage on his C swings, like how effortless he can hit the ball out of the stadium. I don't know if I've really seen that. Um, but Jensen, like, does it really matter if it's 490 feet or 460 feet, which by the way, Jensen hit it like 482 anyways. Like at a certain point, if it's 70 raw power, 70 versus 80, like you still have a huge margin for error. If you're Jensen has better bats of ball at this point. Jensen has better swing decisions. Jensen's a catcher. So yeah, I mean, I would lean towards Jensen. On any of the sorry, DJ Local, can you explain that like or just like phrase it a little bit differently? I don't know if I'm totally following. On any of the guys you moved up, had you almost written them off? I guess like is there anyone that in the back of the top 100 that I was like trending towards not putting on there? Is that what you're saying? I'm concerned about Frosso's arm health. I think at this point, even though at one point he looks like he could be like a really intriguing, pitcher and a really intriguing arm, I just think it's gonna be hard for him to stay healthy consistently. That said, I think he could still be a good bullpen arm. I mean, it's a fastball that we've seen him when he's right, sitting in the upper 90s. He's got his field to spin a breaking ball. I think he's got a chance, or it's field to spin a breaking ball, but great changeup. Just seemed like the shoulder stuff really affected him. The command wasn't great, but I'll never rule out him being a relief arm. But odds are very stacked against him, and it's sad because was very, 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 very talented. What I think will be the biggest riser by the next list update. Oof. I could see Ralphie Velasquez flying. What this guy did in the second half in the Guardian system, I think was one of the most slept on things in minor league baseball. Velasquez was nuts this year. Like, let me see if I can get the exact numbers here. From July 1st onward, he had 1,000 OPS. He hit 333, 411, 594, 51% hard hit rate, and an EV90 of 107 miles per hour. He was 19 years old at the start of the season, finished the year in Double-A, like because he was so good in High A as he hit his stride. And in Double-A, in 28 games in Double-A, he slashed 330, 405, 589. It's a 994 OPS as a 19/20-year-old bat getting his first taste of Double-A, striking out 15% of the time, walking 9.5% of the time. I don't. Ralphie's not getting enough love. This guy was an animal. I could see him flying up the rankings. I could see Caldwell sliding up the rankings a little bit, but Ralphie, I think, could be a mega climber. Caminiti, Bonnemer, I could see rising without a doubt. A healthy Demetrio Chrysantis. I think people were forgetting how good that guy was before he blew his shoulder out. But I would say Ralphie. I think he's going to skyrocket with the way he finished the year. Guys that I was ready to move down, but I was surprised. I would say Ralphie. Like the way he sprinted through the finish line was just eye-popping for me. Ryan Clifford was a guy that I didn't have on the top 100, and then the way he finished the year, I thrusted him in there. Crawford, kind of the same thing. Like the numbers just became undeniable for him. Sproat, I mean, he was looking rough in AAA, then looked really good in AAA, then pitched well in the big leagues. I was ready to kick Sproat off there as well. He really put it together at the end of the year. Why is Justin Crawford so low on most sports? Is it the really high ground ball? Yeah, it's the high ground ball rate because it's really difficult for that swing path and that batted ball data to translate at the highest level because when you're catching the ball that deep, they're just going to blow you up inside. Big league arms are going to exploit hitters that put the ball on the ground that much. It's amazing that Crawford has been as productive as he has because it's and I mean just to be north of 60% ground ball and just continue to tear up AAA and stuff like that is amazing. He did cut the ground ball rate down late in the year. And it was just from egregious to like high. And I think that was part of what encouraged me, even though it was a 20 game sample. I don't think he's ever had a 20 game sample where his ground ball rate was only 50%. And he did that. Before that, it was 63%. So he cut it down for the final 20 games and you saw him slug more. You saw everything get better. But it's a 32% chase rate. It's a super high ground ball rate. And he's a good defender. He's not an elite defender. So I think that part was a little bit limiting as well. Favorite pitcher outside of the top 50 who could finish in the top 20 after 2026. If he doesn't graduate, I would say Jackson Wiggins. I mean, it was one of the best performing fastballs in the minor leagues. I would say Brody Hopkins, if he could just throw more strikes. It was one of the best performing fastballs in the minor leagues. I think those two guys easily make that leap, like easily. Charlie Soto is probably my number one answer, though. Had he not gotten hurt, I think he would have been a consensus top 50 prospect in the game. He did everything you wanted to see from a pitch optimization standpoint through the first three starts. The fastball velocity was up, the shape, because he was more of like a sinker guy. He added a four-seamer that had true ride and still had the sinker, has a disgusting changeup. Like everything had come together. I really thought this was going to be a clear-cut breakout year. Had a slider working for him. If assuming Soto is healthy to start the year next year, I think Charlie Soto is the guy that we see jump as much as anybody. Thank you so much, everyone, for hanging out and doing this. If you have any other questions, please join our Discord. The link should be in a lot of the episode descriptions and stuff, but you can also just search just baseball Discord. And I think you'll be able to find it online. Great way to support everything that we're doing. And I also just love having people in there talking shop and answering questions because you guys are the best. I will answer this one real quick. Who on this top 100 you have a stash of Bowman or told Kern to stash? Benj, bro. I've been doing that forever, but I put Benj on the top 100 to start the year. So Benj was on the top 100 list before I was picking up the cards, but I just kept doing it and kept doing it and kept doing it. But again, thank you so much. Please join the Discord. It's so much fun. Love having you guys in there. Again, thank you all for hanging out in here. This was so much fun. It means the world that you all want to hang out and ask these questions. And it's just the coolest thing in the world for me. So I appreciate you all more than you know. Come hang out in the Discord, and I'll be doing this sometime again soon. You're all the best.